300,000 years ago, Earth was a completely different world. It was a world ruled by the elements and animals, by freezing winds and erupting volcanoes, by raging oceans and impenetrable forests. The landscape was shaped by primitive and relentless forces. The Ice Age, in intermittent cycles, extended its icy grip over parts of Europe and Asia, while in other regions, vast savannas and deserts stretched far and wide, dotted with colossal animals. Have you ever imagined what kinds of creatures roamed the earth in such a distant time? And how did ancient humans manage to survive among ferocious predators and gigantic herbivores? Get ready for a journey into the past and come discover every detail of this incredible coexistence. Africa, Pelorovis. This extinct giant, often referred to as the prehistoric buffalo, reigned over landscapes we now associate with large herds of wildebeests and zebras. But the Pelorovis was much more than just a primitive bovine. It was a colossus of strength and presence, a symbol of a lost era. With crescent-shaped horns that could exceed 6 feet and 6 inches from tip to tip, the Pelorovis was impossible to ignore. Its size was staggering, standing up to 5 feet and 11 inches at the shoulder, and weighing over 2,600 pounds, it rivaled the largest bovids that ever lived. Belonging to the Bovidae family, it was initially mistaken for modern buffaloes, but later studies revealed a much older creature, a missing link between today's cattle and the great herbivores of the Pleistocene. It lived between 2.5 million and 12,000 years ago, a period spanning from the Pliocene to the end of the Pleistocene. During this time, the world witnessed drastic climate changes, the evolution from Homo habilis to Homo sapiens, and a series of mass extinctions that shaped modern biodiversity. The Pelorovis coexisted with early hominids and was likely both hunted and revered by them. Evidence of this can be found in the cave paintings of Central and Northern Africa, where horned figures decorate the cave walls in almost ritualistic fashion. South America, Macrauchenia. Imagine a creature that looks like it was assembled from parts of different animals, a body similar to a camel, a long neck like a giraffe's, and instead of a traditional snout, a protruding nasal structure, maybe even a small trunk. This is the Macrauchenia, one of the most curious figures of South America's megafauna. It's not just an imagined beast. It truly lived on the plains, forests, and grasslands of South America for millions of years, until it went extinct around 10,000 years ago. Macrauchenia, whose name means long neck, belonged to a now completely extinct group of mammals called litopterns. What makes this creature even more fascinating is its eccentric appearance and mysterious evolutionary ties. It wasn't a camel, it wasn't a horse, nor was it an elephant or a tapir. It was a unique lineage that evolved in isolation for millions of years in South America, cut off from the rest of the world. Measuring about 10 feet long and standing up to 6 feet and 6 inches at the shoulder, the Macrauchenia could weigh up to 2,200 pounds. Its body was robust, supported by long, strong legs ending in 3 toes. Its posture vaguely resembled a camel's, but without the hump. The elongated neck gave it a graceful and elegant appearance, possibly useful for reaching leaves on shrubs and mid-level branches, though not as long as a giraffe's. But the most striking feature of the Macrauchenia was its snout. The nasal opening wasn't at the tip of the snout like in horses or camels. It was located on top of the head, between the eyes. This unusual anatomy, led paleontologists to suggest that Macrauchenia may have had a short trunk, similar to that of a tapir, or perhaps a small proboscis, like a llama's, but more flexible. This trunk could have helped it smell the air more efficiently, search for food with precision, or even regulate its body temperature. This odd anatomical detail wasn't just a visual curiosity, it was also a crucial clue in the puzzle of its evolutionary classification. For decades, scientists intensely debated which group of mammals Macrauchenia truly belonged to. Was it related to horses, elephants, camels, or was it an entirely distinct group? Only recently, thanks to paleogenetics, have some of these questions begun to be answered. In 2017, an international team of scientists managed to extract and sequence fragments of mitochondrial DNA from a Macrauchenia fossil found in Patagonia. By comparing this genetic material to that of modern mammals, the results were surprising. Macrauchenia was more closely related to the perissodactyls, the group that includes horses, rhinoceroses, and tapirs, than to any other living group. North America, Nothrotheriops. For millennia, the world was home to creatures that challenge our imagination. Some of these creatures lived in the shadows of the dinosaurs. Others walked beneath the same sky as our ancestors. Among them, one strange and fascinating figure roamed the vast plains and deserts of late Pleistocene North America. Nothrotheriops is an extinct genus of ground sloth, part of the family Nothrotherioidae, more specifically, the subfamily Nothrotherioinae. These sloths were nothing like the tree-dwelling ones we know today. Nothrotheriops was terrestrial, large, and adapted to walking through arid and semi-desert environments. The best-known species is Nothrotheriops shastensis, also known as the Shasta ground sloth, due to fossils found near Mount Shasta in California. Classified in the Nothrotherioidae family, Nothrotheriops belong to a larger group known as Xenarthra, the same group that today includes armadillos, anteaters, and modern sloths. But unlike the arboreal sloths we're familiar with, this was a ground-dwelling creature. Its robust body with forelimbs adapted for digging or pulling vegetation and a thick tail used for support allowed it to stand upright on its hind legs, reaching for taller foliage and defending itself when necessary. Living primarily in what is now the southwestern United States and northern Mexico, Nothrotheriops roamed through dry and semi-dry lands where vegetation was sparse but sufficient to sustain its large body. Its adaptations made it a specialist in dry environments, and fossil evidence shows it could survive in desert regions where few large herbivores could thrive. But what truly captured scientists' attention was not just its size or its range, it was what it left behind. In caves such as the famous Rampart Cave in the Grand Canyon, deposits of fossilized dung, or coprolites, attributed to Nothrotheriops have been found. These exceptional fossils reveal much more than just its diet. They offer a glimpse into how it lived. The contents of these droppings contain remains of plants such as agave, yucca, and even cacti, revealing a diet based on desert vegetation, something extremely rare among large herbivores of the time. And even more astonishing, some of these droppings have been dated to approximately 11,000 years ago. That means Nothrotheriops not only survived the last ice age, it also shared the planet with the first humans in the Americas. While our ancestors were painting caves and mastering fire, These giant sloths were slowly walking in the distance among thorny shrubs and rocky hillsides. Africa, Civatherium. Among the creatures forgotten by time, few are as striking, mysterious, and visually perplexing as the Civatherium, a giant that seemed born of an elegant nightmare, an improbable mix between a giraffe, a moose, and a mythological beast. The name Civatherium literally means beast of Shiva, a reference to the powerful Hindu deity associated with both creation and destruction. And it's no coincidence. This animal was discovered in regions where ancient traditions still echo among ruins and temples. Its fossils were found primarily on the Indian subcontinent and in parts of northern Africa, revealing that Civatherium once wandered through plains, open forests and savannas during times when Earth's climate swung between lush greenery and relentless drought. Standing around 7 feet and 2 inches tall at the shoulder and reaching nearly 10 feet tall with its head raised, the Civatherium was a colossal herbivore. Its body vaguely resembled that of a giraffe, but more compact and muscular. The neck was short by modern giraffe standards, yet still imposing, giving it a regal appearance that dominated the landscape. But perhaps the most iconic trait of the Civatherium was its head. Crowning its skull were 4 bony projections, 2 elongated ossicones, similar to those of modern giraffes, and 2 curved horns resembling those of a moose. This unique combination made Civatherium one of the most visually impressive mammals of all time. Looking into the past, we can trace its lineage to the earliest giraffids, which emerged in Eurasia around 25 million years ago. Civatherium is considered one of the last surviving members of that primitive lineage. Unlike the modern giraffe, which evolved to reach the tallest tree canopies, Civatherium seemed to adopt a different strategy: strength, endurance, and dietary versatility. Its jaws and teeth suggest a varied diet composed of leaves, branches, shrubs, and occasionally even tougher grasses. Living between the end of the Miocene and the beginning of the Holocene, from around 1 million to approximately 8,000 years ago, Civatherium shared the planet with a range of other megafauna: primitive elephants, giant rhinoceroses, colossal hippos, and formidable predators, such as saber-toothed cats and robust hyenas. But unlike many of them, it appears to have survived the Great Pleistocene extinction, at least for a while. Asia, Gigantopithecus. In the shadowy heart of Southeast Asia's tropical forests, where mist weaves through the treetops and time feels suspended, lived a colossal being. A primate so massive, so beyond expectations, that even today it challenges the boundaries of paleontology and imagination. Its name echoes like a whisper among the trees. Gigantopithecus, a giant ape, a living myth of the past, an evolutionary enigma. Gigantopithecus is not just a complicated name for an extinct animal, it's a key to a lost age, a time when massive apes walked like shadows among dwarf elephants, saber-toothed tigers, and the first footsteps of humanity. It represents one of the most intriguing creatures to ever inhabit this planet, not only for its enormous size, but for the mystery that clings to every fragment of its skeleton. It's estimated that Gigantopithecus blacki, the best-known species of this genus, lived between 2 million and 300,000 years ago, primarily in what is now China, Vietnam, Thailand, and other regions of Southeast Asia. It was a distant contemporary of the earliest hominids, but far larger, far stronger, and probably far quieter. Its exact appearance remains unknown, but evidence suggests a creature of epic proportions. Based on fossilized teeth and jawbones, the only remains discovered to date, paleontologists estimate that Gigantopithecus could have stood up to 10 feet tall and weighed about 1,100 pounds. That would make it the largest primate that ever lived. Though true shaggy colossus, wandering through dense forests, fueled by a herbivorous diet made up mostly of bamboo, tough fruits and roots. It's impossible to look at Gigantopithecus and not think of legends. It is often cited as the inspiration for the myth of the Yeti or Sasquatch, legendary creatures said to dwell in remote regions and thick forests. And that connection isn't accidental. The idea of a massive primate walking the forest floor, hidden from human eyes, resonates deeply with how our minds build mythological monsters. And maybe, just maybe, the myth was born from a genetic memory of something that actually existed. But Gigantopithecus wasn't a mythical beast. It was a real creature, a legitimate piece of life's vast tapestry. And what we know about it comes almost exclusively from fossilized teeth and jawbones. No femur, no complete skull. Just fragments, but fragments that speak volumes. Southeast Africa. Vorombe Titan. A colossal creature, covered in feathers instead of scales, with bones that looked like pillars and a presence that dominated everything around it. This was no predator, but its mere silhouette commanded respect. Its name echoes like thunder across the ancient plains of Madagascar. Vorombe Titan, the titan among birds. For centuries, Vorombe was confused, subdivided, misunderstood. It was called Aepyornis, elephant bird, legend. But now we know, it was more than all of that. It was the largest bird that ever lived, the pinnacle of avian evolution in terms of size and body mass. Its name, which means big bird in the Malagasy language, is no exaggeration. It is a factual statement, a long overdue tribute to a creature that survived until surprisingly recent times. Imagine a bird that could exceed 10 feet in height and weigh between 1,700 and 1,900 pounds, nearly 1 ton. Vorombe Titan did not fly. Its wings, if they still existed as visible limbs, were purely symbolic. It was a true terrestrial titan, a distant cousin of today's ostriches and emus, but inflated to Jurassic proportions. Its appearance, though reconstructed only from fossils, likely resembled a monstrous ostrich. An oval-shaped body, legs thick like tree trunks, a small head in proportion to its body, held by a long, muscular neck. Its skin was covered in dense feathers, perhaps brownish or grayish, ideal for camouflage beneath the intense tropical sun. Vorombe Titan inhabited the island of Madagascar for tens of thousands of years, an isolated island where natural selection shaped life forms unlike anywhere else. Leaping lemurs, colorful chameleons, fossils of land-dwelling crocodiles, and of course giant birds. The isolation of Madagascar allowed birds like Vorombe to evolve without direct competition from large herbivorous mammals, which rarely reached the island. Without natural predators, this heavyweight bird was free to grow without limits. Its diet was strictly herbivorous. As a folivore and frugivore, Vorombe fed on leaves, large fruits, and low vegetation. Its beak was not sharp like that of parrots, nor hooked like those of birds of prey. It was adapted for crushing and grinding tough plant fibers. It was in no rush. Its world was one of slowness, of the forest's rhythm and the steady pulse of the plains. Its heavy steps made the earth vibrate, not with fear but with reverence. Europe, Homotherium. Around 3 million years ago, a new kind of hunter emerged across the planet's vast and shifting landscapes, not an ordinary feline nor a legendary beast, but a presence impossible to ignore. Its eyes cut through distance like blades, its paws left deep marks in the earth. And its teeth, long curved, lethal, turned every attack into a deadly ballet of precision. This was Homotherium, the dreaded scimitar-toothed cat, which ruled from the shadows of forests and steppes for millennia. Unlike its more famous cousin, Smilodon, Homotherium followed a different path. Its body was leaner, its legs longer, its jaw less exaggerated, and its hunting strategy more refined. From icy Alaska to the warm plains of Africa, Homotherium spread across 3 continents: North America, Europe, and Asia. It was a global predator, adapted to a staggering variety of environments. This geographical flexibility brought it into contact with a wide range of prey and challenges, and it met each one with a different weapon: speed, cunning, cooperation. Its name literally means beast-like man, a reference to where its first fossils were found, in Greece. Ironically, this name also fits the fact that it shared both time and space with our ancestors. Some fossils even show signs of interaction with early humans, suggesting that these two hunters, one with spears, the other with fangs, crossed paths more than once beneath the glow of ancient campfires. But who was Homotherium, truly? Biologically, it belonged to the subfamily Machairodontinae, a group of extinct cats famous for their saber-like teeth. However, unlike Smilodon, whose teeth projected like massive daggers, Homotherium had shorter, more robust saber teeth, adapted for precise slicing, not deep stabbing. Its skull was flat, with jaws adapted for surgical strikes to the necks of its prey. Its body was a fusion of efficiency and lethality. Standing about 4 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing between 330 and 660 pounds, it was smaller than Smilodon but far more agile. Its front legs were powerful, while the rear legs were longer, suggesting above-average running capability for a cat its size. This morphology indicated a hunter of swift ambushes, one capable of short chases before delivering the fatal blow. East Africa, Mitridiochurus andrewsi. With its snout pointed toward the ground and tusks curved skyward, it represented a wild branch of evolution, rugged, resilient, and incredibly well adapted. This was Mitridiochurus andrewsi, the giant warthog of the African Pleistocene, an ancient beast that still echoes in our oldest instincts. With its fierce and imposing appearance, Mitridiochurus andrewsi seemed to leap straight from a savanna nightmare. But it wasn't a monster, it was a survivor. A descendant of even older lineages, and an ancestor of modern warthogs and the African bush pig. Its bones, found in iconic paleoanthropological sites such as Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania and Kubi Fora in Kenya, tell us not only about the animal itself, but also about the world it inhabited and the evolutionary pressures that shaped its form. Standing over 3 feet and 3 inches at the shoulder and weighing between 330 and 550 pounds, Mitridiochurus stood out as one of the largest members of the Swinae subfamily. But what truly caught attention was its set of tusks, extremely long, upward-curving canine tusks, almost spiral in shape, making it a terrifying sight for any creature that came too close. These tusks weren't just evolutionary ornaments. They had purpose, likely used in combat between males over territory or mates, or even as defensive weapons against primitive lions, giant hyenas, and early hominid hunters. The exaggerated curvature of the upper tusks is one of the most iconic traits of the genus and clearly sets it apart from modern pigs and wild boars. It was a determined omnivore, capable of consuming roots, fruits, tough vegetables, and even small animals when the opportunity arose. Its molars were tall and robust, adapted for grinding fibrous material. This indicates that it had a diet based mostly on resilient vegetation such as dry grasses or hardened roots. This dental trait is a true reflection of the environment it lived in, a land in constant transformation, where only the most versatile feeders could thrive. Above all, it was a specialist in adversity. But what makes Metridiacurus even more fascinating is its role in the paleoanthropological scene. It lived alongside our direct ancestors, Homo habilis, Homo erectus, and perhaps even the first Homo sapiens. The same sites where its fossils are found also reveal stone tools, hominid bones, and evidence of hunting. Oceania, Myolania. The name Myolania literally means small wanderer, but that modest title doesn't do justice to its impressive size. Measuring about 8 feet and 2 inches in length and weighing over 1,100 pounds, it was one of the largest land turtles to have ever existed. However, its most striking feature was the large horns that projected backward from its skull, forming a bony crown that gave it an almost dragon-like appearance. These horns, contrary to what one might think, weren't for attacking. Their main function was defensive. Myolania's head was like a walking fortress. Its eyes were protected by bone, its neck was thick and partially retractable, and the horns made it difficult for predators to bite it effectively. Its tail was another story, segmented with bony rings and ending in spikes. It functioned as a deterrent weapon against any threat daring enough to approach from behind. The first fossils of Myolania were discovered in Australia, but scientists soon realized its traces extended across several Pacific islands, including New Caledonia and Vanuatu. The best-known species, Myolania platyceps, was found on Lord Howe Island, and those fossil remains revealed a creature perfectly adapted to island life. But what made Myolania such a unique turtle wasn't just its appearance, it was its evolutionary story. While most modern turtles evolved into aquatic or semi-aquatic environments, Myolania chose the terrestrial path. That meant a different diet, different behaviors, and a completely unique relationship with its surrounding environment. Herbivorous by nature, Myolania spent much of its day foraging the ground and low shrubs in search of leaves, fallen fruit, and ground vegetation. Its beak was sharp, ideal for cutting through tough plant fibers. There is no evidence that it burrowed like some modern turtles, but its sturdy limbs suggest it was perfectly capable of navigating rough terrains and dense forests. However, living on islands meant isolation, and with isolation came vulnerability. Myolania lived without natural predators for thousands of years. This ecological balance lasted until the arrival of its greatest enemy, the human being. The extinction of Myolania is still a partially solved mystery. But the evidence points to a scenario that has played out many times in island history: the arrival of the first humans. With them came dogs, fire, changes in vegetation, and most critically, hunting. Europe, Megaloceros giganteus. With its antlered branches extending like the arms of an ancient tree, the Megaloceros wasn't just an animal, it was a presence. Its antlers, which could reach a staggering spread of 11 feet and 10 inches, were wider than the height of an adult man, and even so, it carried them with an almost supernatural lightness. Megaloceros giganteus was a member of the deer family, but comparing it to any modern deer would be unfair. It wasn't just bigger, but it was monumental. It stood up to 6 feet and 10 inches tall at the shoulder and weighed more than 1,500 pounds. But what truly captured the attention of any observer, even today when looking at its fossils, were those antlers. Vast, branched, a true natural crown. Those antlers weren't mere decorations. They were social tools, weapons in ritualized duels, symbols of sexual power. Males used them to impress females and intimidate rivals. In ceremonial battles, the antlers clashed with thunderous noise, in duels that resembled medieval jousts, a true spectacle of nature. But behind all that grandeur was a hidden gentleness. The Megaloceros was a peaceful herbivore, grazing calmly on the open plains of Eurasia, where it never strayed for long. It was a creature of open forests and meadows. It favored the transition zones between field and woodland, where it could feed on grasses, leaves, and sprouts. Its powerful jaw and specialized teeth allowed it to process a wide variety of vegetation. The Megaloceros emerged around 400,000 years ago and became one of the most iconic creatures of the Pleistocene. Its silhouette dominated the cold, vast horizons of the Ice Age. It shared its habitat with animals that now seem straight out of a fantasy world: woolly rhinoceroses, cave bears, and the colossal woolly mammoths. But it also lived alongside a new type of creature, one that would forever change the fate of wildlife on Earth: the human being. The earliest known representations of the Megaloceros appear on the walls of European caves, painted by our ancestors with pigments made from natural oxides. This not only suggests they hunted the animal, but also that they revered it. The cave paintings in places like Lascaux and Chauvet show Megaloceros with antlers extended in full glory, as if it were a mystical being. It's possible that it was more than just food. Perhaps it was a spiritual symbol, a bridge between humanity and nature, or a forest guardian spirit. Still, as much reverence as there may have been, there was also necessity, and humans hunted. With rudimentary spears and coordinated tactics, our ancestors chased the Megaloceros through hills and valleys. The meat, the hide, the bones, everything was used. And although it wasn't the only factor in its extinction, human pressure was one of the primary triggers that led to the downfall of this titan of the plains. The extinction of the Megaloceros occurred around 7,000 years ago during the Holocene, when the climate became milder and dense forests replaced the open grasslands. Europe, the aurochs. Deep inside the caves of Lascaux, France, more than 17,000 years ago, the aurochs were painted with swift, powerful strokes. The aurochs, Bos primigenius, was more than just a wild bovine. He was the direct ancestor of domestic cattle, a living bridge between the ancient world and ours. And today, despite being extinct, his legacy still pulses silently in the genes of the cows and bulls that feed the planet. His story began around 2 million years ago, on the open, fertile plains of Central Asia. There, under vast skies and cutting winds, the first aurochs emerged as creatures perfectly adapted to their time. Large, agile, and fierce when threatened, they quickly became masters of their ecosystems. They spread with astonishing ease, conquering territory after territory, adapting to the temperate forests of Europe and the arid savannas of North Africa. Their muscular bodies could reach up to 6 feet and 6 inches tall at the shoulder, and their weight easily exceeded 2,200 pounds. The males' dark coats gleamed in the sunlight, with a shine reminiscent of obsidian armor. The females, slightly smaller and lighter in color, traveled in herds led by experienced matriarchs, fiercely protecting their calves with moving maternal devotion. The horns, long and forward curving, served both as weapons and displays. In battles over territory or females, males clashed in dramatic duels. The sound of impact echoed through the valleys like the crack of ancient thunder, forehead against forehead, strength against strength. There was something sacred in that clash, as if nature were contesting itself in an eternal ritual. For thousands of years, they coexisted with formidable predators, European lions, cave bears, giant wolves. But none posed the threat that would come later, a threat that walked upright, armed, and hungry for dominance: Homo sapiens. With the rise of the first organized human groups, the aurochs became a prestigious hunting target. Taking one down required strategy, cooperation, and bravery, and that made their meat, hides, and bones all the more valuable. Hunters who succeeded in killing an aurochs were seen as heroes. Their meat fed villages, their horns became ceremonial cups, and their image was often etched into stone walls. Eurasia, the woolly rhinoceros. Long before the first empires rose, before cities, pyramids, written words, or structured memory, there was a world ruled by ice. The land was vast, cold and wild, and there, among the glacial steppes and piercing winds of the Pleistocene, walked a creature wrapped in thick fur and ancient silence, the woolly rhinoceros, Quaelodonta antiquitatis. Its scientific name, Quaelodonta antiquitatis, means ancient hollow tooth. But its greatest strength wasn't in its teeth, it was in its sheer presence. It measured up to 13 feet in length and nearly 6 feet and 7 inches at the shoulder. Its weight ranged from 4,400 to 6,600 pounds. And yet, despite its colossal mass, it was agile, efficient, and extremely well adapted to the planet's biting cold. Its body was covered in a dense reddish-brown fur made up of 3 layers: a soft inner wool, longer guard hairs, and an oily underlayer that kept moisture from reaching the skin. Its wide, flat nose was protected by thick, sensitive skin, perfect for sweeping snow in search of roots, mosses, and frozen grasses. The front horn, curved and long, could exceed 3 feet and 3 inches. It was used for both defense against predators and battles between males. but it also had a practical role, clearing snow to access food. The second horn, smaller and located closer to the eyes, offered structural support and functioned as a secondary tool in fights and displays. They roamed in small family groups, led by experienced females, much like modern elephants. They were solitary in nature, but followed predictable routines, attuned to the rhythms of the earth and its seasons. In winter, they migrated in search of ice-free pastures. In summer, they took advantage of melting snow to consume more nutrient-rich vegetation. The first encounters between humans and woolly rhinoceroses were likely marked by mutual awe. On one side, hunters who saw an opportunity for food, hides, and tools. On the other, a creature that for millennia had no natural predators. Still, the relationship between humans and woolly rhinos wasn't purely one of conflict. There was also admiration, even reverence. Evidence of this can be seen in cave paintings found in France and Spain. On the walls of Chauvet Cave, 30,000 years ago, human hands painted the silhouette of these giants using charcoal and ochre. The astonishing level of detail reveals the care with which they observed the animal. It wasn't just an enemy, it was a spirit of the land. Canis mosbacensis. Before howls pierced the cold nights of the Ice Age, before packs followed humans along ancient trails, before any dog ran beside mankind, there was another. A predator who walked in the shadows of time, silent, persistent, invisible to most modern eyes. It wasn't a monster, nor a myth. It was real, and from it would come the wolf Canis mosbacensis. The name might sound technical, distant, almost lifeless, but behind it hides one of the most important creatures in the evolutionary chain of canids. Living over 500,000 years ago, Canis mosbacensis was the forgotten link between ancient wild jackals and the majestic Canis lupus, the grey wolf. It was the prototype of the social hunter, the draft version of the perfect predator, the spark before the howl. Its name comes from the Mosbach region in Germany, where the first fossils were discovered, but its bones are scattered across Eurasia. From Siberia to the Iberian Peninsula, from boreal forests to open plains, Canis mosbacensis roamed entire continents during the transition from the early to the middle Pleistocene, roughly between 700,000 and 400,000 years ago. It wasn't large. It measured about 3 feet and 3 inches in length and weighed between 44 and 66 pounds. Lighter than modern wolves, but more robust than a coyote. Its body was compact, muscular, efficient, and most importantly, it didn't hunt alone. Early signs of social behavior, the very trait that would define wolves, were already present. This collaborative behavior was a powerful adaptation. In a world dominated by megafauna, mammoths, woolly rhinos, bison, and giant deer, group hunting was a tremendous advantage. Canis mosbacensis understood that. With its pack, it would surround prey, exhaust them, and attack from the flanks. A coordinated assault and almost choreographed, instinctive. But hunting was only part of the equation. Living in groups required more than just shared prey. It demanded communication, structure, and leadership. Packs of mosbacensis already showed signs of hierarchy. The strongest led, the younger ones learned by watching. Mothers cared for their young together. It was the beginning of the pack. For centuries, Canis mosbacensis stood at the peak of the canine world. But it wasn't alone. Other carnivores competed for territory and food: hyenas, big cats, prehistoric bears. The competition was fierce. And then, around 400,000 years ago, something changed. The first signs of a new type of canid began to appear. Slightly larger, slightly stronger, slightly more social. It was the dawn of Canis lupus. The modern wolf was being born. Panthera leo fossilis. A lion tied to the earth, to the mineral memory of the planet. But it wasn't always so. It once walked with power across the grasslands of Europe, long before the modern Panthera leo roamed the savannas. It was a colossus of the megafauna, a sovereign of the Pleistocene. Between 600,000 and 300,000 years ago, Europe and parts of Central Asia looked nothing like they do today. These were wild lands, teeming with life, covered in dense forests, open plains, and deep marshes. Herbivores were abundant: giant deer, wild horses, primitive bison. And where there is prey, there are predators. Among them, none was more feared than Panthera leo fossilis. It was the largest lion ever recorded, even larger than the cave lion that would come after. Males could exceed 11 feet and 5 inches in length, including the tail, with an estimated weight between 600 and 650 pounds. Its physical build resembled a heavily muscled tiger, more than today's African lion, a creature of mythical proportions, with broad jaws, paws like shovels, and gladiator-like shoulders. Despite its name linking it to modern lions, Fossilis was different, more primitive. It is believed to have evolved from Panthera spelea, which itself descended from large Asian cats like Panthera zdansky. The fossilis represented a vital link between lower Pleistocene big cats and the modern jungle kings. It didn't roar to announce its presence. Fossilis was a silent hunter. Alone or in pairs, it stalked the grasslands, using terrain and vegetation as cover. Its attack was lethal, swift, efficient. It would leap onto prey such as giant deer or young mammoths, grabbing them with recurved claws nearly 3 inches long. Fossils of Panthera leo fossilis have been found in places like Mauer and Mosbach in Germany and Isernia in Italy, telling the story of this giant in fragments. Canine teeth, tibius, skulls, and vertebrae reveal a predator perfectly built to dominate, a body shaped by cold, by scarcity, and by the alternating abundance of the Ice Age. And there, in the shadows of glacial forests, it encountered Homo heidelbergensis, the primitive human of Europe. Perhaps they fought. Perhaps it was feared or revered. Maybe it was hunted or did the hunting. What is certain is that they shared the same stage. Both wanted the same thing: to survive. Over time, the climate changed. Glaciers advanced and retreated. New species emerged. New environmental pressures demanded adaptation. Panthera leo fossilis began to evolve. From it came the famous cave lion Panthera spelea, which inherited its strength and adapted it to an even colder and more challenging world. But before it vanished, Fossilis left behind a genetic legacy. It is the direct ancestor of modern lions. Its blood runs in the felines that today roam the African plains. Its instinct survives in the golden eyes of every hunting lioness. Its spirit, though forgotten by many, still lives. And so, an inevitable question arises. Why did it disappear? The answer, as always, lies in the Earth's cycles. The transition from the Middle to Late Pleistocene brought drastic changes in climate and prey distribution. With the emergence of new competitors and mounting environmental pressure, Fossilis was gradually replaced by its more agile descendant, Spelaea. Natural selection spares no royalty. It rewards adaptation. And when the environment demands new strategies, not even kings remain untouched. Fossilis surrendered its throne not in battle, but out of necessity. It changed. It evolved. It became something else. Western Asia. Elephas antiquus. Standing nearly 13 feet tall at the shoulders and weighing over 28,600 pounds, it was a force of nature. But its grandeur wasn't just in its size. It was in how it commanded its environment, in the respect it inspired, in the solemn silence of its existence. A gentle giant, forged in the Pleistocene epochs, long before the world became what we know. Its body was robust yet elegant, covered in thick skin adapted not for extreme cold like the mammoth, but for milder climates. Because Elephas antiquus was not a creature of the ice, but of abundance. It inhabited a warmer, greener Europe during interglacial periods, when forests expanded and biodiversity flourished. While mammoths ruled the cold and the plains, Elephas antiquus reigned in the woodlands. It walked through forested paths, feeding on leaves, branches, and fruits. Its tusks, long and gently curved upward, were not only tools for digging or defense, they were also symbols of status, instruments for social interaction, and often objects of reverence among the human species that lived alongside it. Elephas antiquus first appeared around 780,000 years ago and remained on Earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Its territorial range stretched from southern England to the Middle East, from northern Africa to the forests of Germany and France. Wherever there was water and dense vegetation, it could thrive. It was one of the largest elephants to ever exist, in size, range, and ecological importance. On the green plains of the Iberian Peninsula, or near the rolling hills of Italy, herds of antiquus marched with ancient calm. Females led the herds, just as their modern descendants do today. The males, upon reaching maturity, left to lead more solitary lives, wandering between herds or joining temporarily during mating season. It was a matriarchal society, structured, sensitive, and ancient. The interactions between humans and Elephas antiquus are recorded in fossils, stone tools, and traces of campsites. These were not mere chance encounters, they were confrontations. Some of these giants were hunted, brought down with traps, ambushes, or during coordinated group hunts. It took courage and cooperation to fell an Elephas antiquus, but the reward was immense. Meat, hide, bones, tusks. Still, this story isn't all about conflict. There is also reverence, cave paintings, carefully arranged bones, signs of rituals. Elephas antiquus was more than food. It was a symbol, a challenge, a living legend. Its silhouette marked the landscape as much as any mountain. And like every great species, it left deep footprints. At archaeological sites like Bildungsleben in Germany or Torralba and Ambrona in Spain, fossils and artifacts reveal the complex coexistence between humans and ancient elephants. At these places, the remains of Elephas antiquus are found alongside stone tools, cut marks, and signs of human manipulation. Time has stood still there. As the millennia passed, the climate began to shift once more. The cycle of ice ages continued its course. The vegetation that sustained these giants retreated. Temperatures dropped, and with it, the ideal habitat for Elephas antiquus shrank. It was not adapted to extreme cold. Its broad feet were not made for snow, its diet not for tundra. Little by little, the colossus gave way to its more rugged relatives, the woolly mammoth to the north, Elephas africanus to the south, and what was once abundant became rare. By around 100,000 years ago, its presence in Europe began to fade, and between 50 and 30,000 years ago, silence replaced the heavy footsteps of the giant. Ancient humans. Before writing, before cities, before the wheel domesticated fire, bronze, and iron, before names, kings, and gods, before everything we now call human, there was a time when the first of us opened our eyes and saw the world as no one ever had before. A world still wild, still untouched, a world where we were only just beginning. Around 300,000 years ago, the first Homo sapiens emerged onto the stage of time. They were not quite like us, and yet they were us. With bodies as strong as they were agile, with eyes that glowed in the firelight, with hands that already shaped stone tools with purpose. Men and women of the beginning, breathing the same air we breathe today, standing on the same earth, gazing at the same stars. But without history, without past, without certainty, only instinct and something new, awareness. The oldest traces we have of our species were found at Jebel Irhoud, in what is now Morocco. Fragments of skulls, jaws, and stone tools scorched by time. There, among ashes and bones, lie the echoes of the first sapiens, our direct ancestors. Beings who still walked between two worlds, the animal and the human. In their hands, chipped stones. In their hearts, perhaps, the first flickers of memory. But what do we really know about them? We know they were hunters and gatherers, that they lived in small groups, organized by bonds of blood and survival, that they wandered through savannas, highlands, and valleys of Africa in search of water, food, and safety. We know they built shelters from what they had, branches, hides, rocks, that they used spears, sharp flakes, primitive axes. But that's not the whole story, because these humans were not just bodies, they were minds in formation.